good as last week?
Every week is
Every
better.
week is good.
They say the Rebbe used to come and say this Yontif is good because every week
Wherever you are at that time.
Last week was Mechusa Kippurim about a Yelgus. I think the Sikh is this Sikh is Edeler. What's going to happen in the Sikh is the Rebbe is going to bring 2 Gedarim in Pekuach Nefesh. He's going to bring 2 Gedarim in Pekuach Nefesh. So when a person's life is in danger, you don't do a mitzvah to save a life except for Avodah Zarah Gad Shvichas Dam. He's going to bring 2 Gedarim for Pekuach Nefesh. And the Chatchila, we're going to say that these 2 Gedarim apply to most mitzvahs and Shabbos. Then the Rebbe is going to say both Gedarim apply everywhere. But the second Geder we learn from Shabbos. So when we're going to finish the Sikha, it's not going to be 2 Gedarim that apply in 2 different situations. Both Gedarim apply everywhere. But the second Geder we learn from Shabbos. What is going to be the 2 Gedarim? The first Geder is you do an Aveda to save a life so you should be able to do many more mitzvahs. Like the Lashon which you have to in Hilchas Shabbos, Chaleil all of Shabbos Achas Kadesh Yishmeh Shabbos Asarba V'Shom Neis also Shabbos. That you desecrate one Shabbos to be able to keep many Shabbos. In other words, why are you Oived and Aveda? To save a life, so you should be able to do many more mitzvahs. Such as if you were saying that you're being machal, you're doing an Aveda to save a life because the Eibush is going to gain, you're going to do more mitzvahs. The second Geder is going to be that you are over an Aveda to save a life because the whole Yiddishkeit is about Yidden. It's not because when you're going to do this Aveda and you're going to save a life, you'll be able to do more mitzvahs. You're going to be able in Aveda to save a life because Yiddishkeit without Yidden is Nishka Yiddishkeit. Wait, both of them go v'chai behem. They both in the same pasuk.
I don't know.
But they type v'chai behem in 2 ways. First, v'chai behem is ich will do more mitzvahs, and v'chai behem because the whole Yiddishkeit is Yidden. But this second idea, which applies to Kol HaTorah Kula, you learn dafka from Shabbos. So what's going to end up happening is it's 2 layers of the same cake. In the first half of the Sikha, the Rebbe is going to separate the 2. That by most mitzvahs, you do the Aved to save a life in a way of the Chuya. In Shabbos, you're going to do the mitzvah to save a life in the Hutra. It's 2 different. The end is going to be every single mitzvah has both layers. One layer is you save a life by being over an Aveda. So you should be able to do more mitzvahs. And the other layer is because if there's no Yid, there's no Yiddishkeit. That we learn from Shabbos. And what gets flushed out in the Sikha, and we're going to start with that. We're starting from the end. I'm starting with the punchline. This is the taich that Shabbos is an ois. You know, we all know that a Yid needs 2 oises. A Yid needs 2 oises. The Bris Milah is one os. Tefillin is another os. And that's why in Shabbos you don't put on tefillin because you have 2 oises. What is the meaning of an ois? The meaning of an ois is that Judaism is about Jews. That's the pshat. It's so beautiful. And what's so incredibly beautiful about it is there's now one word of Chassidus in this entire Sikha. It's all Rambam. But it's the Higoyin, the Edelkeit of the Svaras, it's so Chassidish. The Maskana is going to be that, it's classic Chassidus. You know, I always tell people, what was the Baal Shem Tov's uftu? There's 100 things that you can say, but I say my standard answer to that question is that the Baal Shem Tov changed the center of gravity of Judaism away from Torah mitzvahs to the Jew. Until the Baal Shem Tov, you were Jewish because you did Torah mitzvahs. After the Baal Shem Tov, you do Torah mitzvahs because you're a Jew. The most important thing is the Yid.
The mental Yid.
Mamish. This Sikha is going to say this in Halacha. And it's going to show it to you in the wording of the Rambam. It's going to show it to you in the wording of the Rambam.
Nice question. Does it say, when you say to save a life, does it say anywhere? You can be Machal, the word Machal, Shabbos to save a life?
Sure.
No question. They use the word Machal.
Yeah, Chalei Lolo Shabbos Achad, Seish Mishabas Harbe.
It's Chil Shabbos. The Lashon's Chil Shabbos.
Right, you see,
It's
the
not
Rebbe
Shabbos,
has a
though.
problem
That's
because the
not
Rambam
Shabbos.
says by Shabbos, the Chuya not Hutra. In the beginning of the Sikh, he wants to say that by other Avedas, it's the Chuya Eitzel B'Koach Nefesh. And by Shabbos, it's Hutra Eitzel B'Koach Nefesh. And the Rebbe shows, you'll see it befedish in footnote 33, that by Shabbos it says the Chuya. So because of all these reasons, in other words, the Rebbe starts off the Sikha by saying there's two Gedorim in V'chai Ben V'leish Yomas Ben. And then the Rebbe says there's not two Gedorim, there's two Eichayos. Every mitzvah has V'chai B'hem. Shabbos adds another dimension to the same mitzvah of V'chai B'hem. The first V'chai B'hem is you have to save a life and do an Aveda V'chai B'hem, so you should do more mitzvahs. And the second V'chai B'hem, you have to do an Aveda and save a life because there's no Jews, there's no Judaism, because it's about Yidden. It's nicht Baal Shem Tov, it's Alts Rambam, mit Achinuch.
It's not Torah Mitzvahs, it's Jews.
It's Yidden. And that's the Taich Ois. When you were taught in childhood that the Yidden have Ois, a covenant, a Ois, a sign, the Ois means that it's about Yidden. So go to Sif Ches. We're going to learn Sif Ches first. It's delicious. It's mamish delicious.
Then we're going to go back?
Yeah, of course. I wouldn't want to disappoint Mendy and let him go home before 10:30. Sif Ches, I'm reading the first full paragraph. Tell me when you have it, okay? It's mamish exceptional. I'm sorry that I made the copy before I did the scribble. I prepared the last few weeks, I prepared twice. But I wasn't sure if we'll have time to prepare twice. I made the copies right away. Not what to eat. By Shabbos state, as Shabbos Tishmeir, it says by Shabbos, you should guard Shabbos. Ki oisi. It's a sign between you and me, the Yisechem for your generations. Ladas, that you should know, Kani Adeshem Agadeshachem, I am the Eibishter who makes you Yidden holy. Und Rashi touched, quote, Ois gedula hi beineinu. It's a sign of greatness between us. Shebacharti b'chem, that I chose you. B'hanchili lochem, when I gave you as an inheritance, as yemenuchasi, my day of rest. Lemenucha, that it should be your day of rest. It's my day of rest. I'm giving it to you, and in giving it to you, it's a ois gedula beineinu. It's a sign of your greatness in mine eyes between us. Uvi bow. As Teuchen mitzvah shvisas Shabbos, the meaning of resting on Shabbos is ois hi beini u beinechem, a sign between you and me. It's lashon pasuk. Shebacharti b'Shem, I chose you. B'shas hayid stayed b'matzav v'sakonos nefashos, when a Jew's life is in danger, felt in them etzemiyim for Shabbos. There's something missing in Shabbos because of Shabbos, not because of the Yid. In other words, since the Eibishter made a covenant between Yid and the Eibishter that defines what a Yid is, when a Yid is not in the right mind with the matzav, something is wrong with Shabbos, because Shabbos is the sign that Yid are special. So the Pikuach Nefesh is not a Pshat, a Yid is not going to be able to keep another Shabbos. It's the Pshat, there's something wrong with Shabbos, because Shabbos is the sign that Yid have to be beseder. Ubemela, accordingly, B'shas miz mechalel Shabbos to li pekuach nefesh. If one desecrates the Shabbos pekuach nefesh, is nit nor was miz mekayim a mitzvah pekuach nefesh. You're not saving a life. Was miz derbei mekayim an inyan ikri v'shmira Shabbos. Nor, but rather, you're not just saving a life. And what's good about that, this guy is not dying. Nor miz derbei mekayim an inyan ikri v'shmira Shabbos. When you save a life, you're keeping Shabbos. You know why? Not so a Yid should keep another Shabbos, but because a Yid is an ois. Shabbos is an ois about the special connection in the Eibishter, and if a Yid Chas v'Shalom dies on Shabbos, it takes away from the ois. Der ois hi b'ni b'nech. The sign between Yid and the Eibishter is Shabbos. So when you save a Yid's life on Shabbos, you're not doing the Yid a favor, you're doing Shabbos a favor. You're doing the ois a favor. And he explains, der ois wird nit nor durch nifa. The ois, the sign of the special connection between Yid and Hashem, is not only affected by the result, the guy is alive, so he can keep Noch Shabbos. That the mitzvah was mit matzah gewesen, and nefesh mitzvah, he saved another Jew. Durch wemen es wird die Metzias von ois the Shabbos, through whom the sign of Shabbos is established. Moreover, der etze meise hachilul, the act of desecration of Shabbos itself, bringt arois, it brings out them ois b'ni b'nechem, the sign between the Eibush and Yid.
You don't have the Ace, have nothing.
Right. We have no Ois and no Yiddishkeit. Because Yiddishkeit is Yidden. Now, here it says only about Shabbos. The Revaile, it says only about Shabbos, right? Wait. B'Shas. Men is matzel a nefesh mi Yisrael v'shteit b'tzakona b'Shabbos. You save a Yid whose life is named on Shabbos. Is dorach dem chil Shabbos. But that's the great. In this Shabbos, lahatzalos, to save this Yid, is men mekayim, you sustain. And the Rebbe says in Yiddish, stark men, you strengthen dem ois b'niyah b'nich. The sign of special friendship between Yid and the Eibishter is strengthened by saving Yid on Shabbos. Because the Yid is the ois. The Yid is the ois. The Yid is the ois. As the Eibishter is Boicher and Yid, Hashem chose the Jewish people. Shabbos haste. The meaning of Shabbos is as medafton di pu'ula von chilu Shabbos to leave ir. Shabbos is commanding you desecrate the Shabbos for me. Why? I am a sign about the special bond between the Eibishter and the Yid. And if when the Shabbos comes that a Yid suffers, it takes away from Shabbos what Shabbos is. To leave ois hi mit ubenechem nefesh von Yid. Shabbos is a sign of the special. So Shabbos is asking you, please be mechal me to preserve me. Right? Wait.
Well, don't you say that it's tchuya? Why are we saying that it's chutya? He has to be teiche. That's the way it always.
If you want to quote me, you have to quote me correctly.
No, I heard it.
It's all I
I
take.
always knew this from before.
I understand, but I spoke about it tonight.
He said the chuya. No, I know.
That the Rebbe says about Shabbos also tchuya. That's why the Rebbe has no choice but to say this pshat. That has nothing to do with the nigla. The chil Shabbos is the chuya. But the effect of that chil Shabbos is that you makayim the ois of Shabbos.
In other words, it's not a negative that brings a positive.
It's a positive. Exactly, that's the point that I've been making. But the vart is that you learn from Shabbos to kol hatera kula. Listen, keep going. When dem inyan, this idea, lernt man up from Ashiyasa Eisam Ha'adam, this week's passion, we learn it from the pasuk that we should v'chai b'hem, we should live with it, v'leish yom, we shouldn't die with it. Now this pasuk v'chai b'hem, v'leish yom, I looked up the Gemara. The Gemara is a Masechta Yom. I looked it up. The Gemara brings 5 or 6 limudim that you know you're supposed to be B'chal Shabbos to save a life. And that the Gemara says that each one has a problem except this one. The problem is V'chai b'hem v'leish yom is not written by Shabbos. It's written by mitzvahs. But the Gemara says that from V'chai b'hem v'leish yom you learn a din specifically for Shabbos. But from Shabbos you learn for everything else. Keep going. The pasuk v'chai b'hem is not speaking about Shabbos. The pasuk v'chai b'hem is speaking of all mitzvahs. Now, this idea that you desecrate, you do an aveda to save a life because there's a covenant between Yidden and the Eibishter, and by violating this aveda to save a life, you're preserving that mitzvah, which is a sign, is not true only by Shabbos. It's true everywhere. Val that inyan hanal is be'emes in alle mitzvahs. It's not limited to Shabbat. It's really true of all mitzvahs. Look, and he brings a chinuch. Listen to this chinuch. Unitnar v'de loshen chinuch. It's not like the chinuch says. V'shesiba sasiyas ha-mitzvah hu ha'adam. The whole reason we're doing mitzvahs is the person. V'kiyum asibo kiyum akayel, and fulfilling the cause, which is a yid, is sustaining the mitzvahs. Was the far degen akel, and that's also the foshes v'chol azoros l'chal shabbat. The Rebbe is holding that, but the chinuch says Judaism is for Jews. No Jews, no Judaism. So when you save a Jew, you're saving Yiddishkeit. Says the Rebbe, it's more than that. Because when you're saving a Jew, you're saving Judaism. Your concern is Judaism. We just need the Jew for it. Says the Rebbe, not eich mitam achinuch atzmei, but as the chinuch himself says, val alle mitzvahs hu sibasan ha'adam. In other words, the Rebbe is reading the chinuch twice. You could say pshat and chinuch. You have to save a person's life for the sake of Yiddishkeit because the Yid is going to do mitzvahs. Or you could say you have to save a Yid's life for the sake of Yiddishkeit because Yiddishkeit is for a Yid. And that's what Shabbos adds. It's an ois. And what is it, an ois? Beiniyah beinechem. The ois is we don't serve God. We have a relationship with God. And this service is second. So from Shabbos we learn that the relationship between Yidden and the Eibishter is about the Yid himself, not about Yiddishkeit. So when you're desecrating Shabbos to preserve a Yid, that is the kiyum of Shabbos. But once you know it by Shabbos, the Rambam says it teaches you Achei Temimim. Well, alle mitzvahs is sibasan hu ha'adam. All mitzvahs really, their cause is the person. Und alle zei seinen betechnem, that in spirit, all mitzvahs is an ois. Even though we say Shabbos is an ois, but really all mitzvahs are an ois. Zwischen dem Eibishter mit Yidden, between Hashem and the Yidden, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bacha Behem, the Eibishter chose. Not but then, top of the second column. B'miyuchod u'mefurish, aber, al teicha for der mitzvah, specifically and explicitly, however, as this content of this particular mitzvah, she'etes b'Shabbos daf, specifically b'Shabbos. So the emes is, once you have this concept by Shabbos, that the Yiddishkeit serves a Yid because it establishes the covenant, the bond, the sign between Yid and the Eibishter. So when you save a Yid's life by doing an Aveda, you're doing that mitzvah even better. You really have your mitzvah, but you learn it from Shabbos. When the Rebbe is echt the limud v'chayba, and that's why in the Gemara, the limud v'chayba is a limud b'yuchad by Shabbos. You learn specifically by Shabbos, pikuach nefesh, deicha Shabbos. Even though once you have it by Shabbos, you have by all mitzvahs. Keep going.
Why is it?
Al pizaha.
So why did it dark by Shabbos it says it?
Because by Shabbos it says in the Chumash, Oisi b'nei b'neicha. So you join the Oisi b'nei b'neicha by Shabbos with the V'chai b'hem v'leisha yamas b'hem. And you allow the Oisi to define what's the V'chai b'hem. Because you could define the V'chai b'hem in two ways. One way is the V'chai b'hem v'leisha yamas b'hem is we still do mitzvahs. And the other way V'chai b'hem is to preserve Yidden.
Partners.
That we're partners. So the Rambam brings the pasuk v'chai b'hem twice. He brings it in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, and he brings it in Hilchos Shabbos. Why? It's exactly the same halacha. You do an Aveda to save a life, but until you get to Hilchos Shabbos and you learn the concept of ois, you think that v'chai b'hem v'leishom b'hem is for the sake of Yiddishkeit. When you get to Hilchos Shabbos, you discover that it's not for the sake of Yiddishkeit, it's for the sake of the Yid. But once you learn it in Hilchos Shabbos for the sake of the Yid, you learn that it applies to all mitzvahs. Keep reading. Look.
I appreciate
Do you
that.
mind if I read one more paragraph? Al Pizeh is eich move, and it explains was the Rambam zok. When the Rambam says, "Lagabe dem limud meyuchad denal benegel Shabbos," and it comes to learn this about Shabbos. V'asol lehismahameya b'chil Shabbos. The Rambam brings additional lesson from the Gemara. You're not allowed to hesitate b'chil Shabbos. L'choy le'shesh beisakon. Not that you're b'choy, you're not allowed to hesitate. Shenemar ashasa esav ha'odlam v'chai behem v'leish yom. He brings the pasuk that you have to live with mitzvahs and die with mitzvahs. And then he says, "Underlehren der Fud." And the Rambam says that we learn up b'negeya ale mishpatei atera. Once you get to Shabbos, and Shabbos is an ois, it becomes an ois which redefines all mitzvahs. Quote: "Halamadata, you learn she'ei mishpatei hatayra." The whole Torah is not nekama ba'elam. It's not Hashem is trying to push us. Elarachmin v'chesed v'shalom ba'elam. It's compassion and His kindness and peace in the world. The mit-mainter. What the Rambam is teaching us is that once you get to Shabbos and you learn the idea that by Shabbos is a nice, it informs the whole rest of the Torah. As nid the pirush is, the pshat is not. As b'makam sakana zayin the mitzvahs nid gezag geworden, that when you have a danger, there's no mitzvah. Is them it's not the pshat. Someone's life in danger. You're pater from the mitzvah. No, someone's life in danger. This is the mitzvah. Nor the pirushes as the mishpatei atera gufa zogin. Every mitzvah, once you have the ois by Shabbos, it informs all the mitzvahs. Every mitzvah is saved. As b'mokayim sakana is mishpatei atera. In the place of sakana, the mishpat of the Torah is matafai the nefesh, to save the life of a Jew. But alle mishpatei atera b'chlal, because all the mishpat of Torah in general, so nirachamim v'chesed v'shalom be'elam. Aber, however, the Rambam talks about Shabbos. It starts with Shabbos. Or Malera to start from Shabbos. And you'll learn it from Shabbos of Yiddishkeit. But Begoli, or B'mudgash is just by Shabbos. It's revealed. And it's emphasized dafka by Shabbos.
Shabbos is nice.
I would say Eis La'elam.
Keep going. Let's read it very right. Yeah? There's an obvious question. I'm going to take a close question. The L'chayda. Them pasuk, the pasuk on which the halachas are built, v'chai behem, ashasa esam ha'odam v'chai behem, is not talking about Shabbos. The Gemara brings it as a din in Shabbos. The Gemara brings 5 or 6 different dayas that you should be mechal Shabbos kuach nefesh. One of them is v'shamar reis off the Shabbos. So shmartem as the other dayas are much more Shabbos centric, and the Gemara says every one of the other dayas is agishlog except this one. But this one's not about Shabbos. Retach wegen dem Adam atzmei. It's talking about the person, talking about Shabbos. Bishleima das was man lernt ab der von as b'chol mitzvahs. When you say from the pasuk v'chai behem v'loish yamas behem that you're supposed to live and not die, that is talking about Yiddishkeit in general, that you do an aver to save a life, makes sense. V'al derech zeh achoyle sheyesh beis hakona meger be'atme mechal Shabbos in this movement. It's understood why a person could desecrate Shabbos to save his own life. From Vanen Weisman aber, how do you know that another Jew has to be Mechal Shabbos, have another year's life? As they seine Mitzvah Mechal Shabbos, they commanded to desecrate the Shabbos. If it asks for a zweiten Yid to save a second Jew, says the Rebbe, the answer is Pashat, because this is what Shabbos is. This is Shabbos. Al Pizeh Muva mit dem Etzem Hatzollah von dem Yidden. When you save a Yid, in welche is welch Yid is alone, welche is welch Yid soll es nur tun. Whoever does it is der mit Mekayim dem Ois zwischen dem Eibishter mit Yidden. He is affirming the bond between Yidden and Hashem, which is what Shabbos is.
Is this only Mechal Shabbos in order to save a life, or this is Chilul Shabbos whenever we're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos?
When you start asking a question, make sure you know what the end of your question is.
You're really shooting today.
You're really not thinking tonight. Where are you going with this? Chilul Shabbos what? For color war?
on the table, man.
Where are you going with your shaila?
Let's say somebody's sick and he's taking medicine, he's doing certain things that is not Shabbos. But yeah,
That's a Chilul Shabbos. It's not Chilul Shabbos. That's a Shulchan Aruch. When are you Mechal Shabbos to save a life? When? You can say Karbonis. It's the only place you can go with this. It's by Karbonis we talk and say Hota not Choya. That is Kiyuma, right? B'chaleh meis Yumas or be a Shabbos neikvos. Karbonis is talking not the Choya. It's Hutra. The Chiddush of this Sikh is Chilul Shabbos to save a life is called the Choya. Footnote 33, as Mendy pointed out correctly before. And even though it's the Choya, it's this way, you understand?
Well, Matt, I appreciate the ice part of it.
But one thing, you understand why I'm starting from the end. It doesn't matter if you get the Sikha, you gotta get this.
You want to scare us away.
But the Ikir is, this is a Rambam, that's it. It's a Rambam. And the Rebbe reads a Chinuch, and he says, you can read the Chinuch like this, and you can read the Chinuch like this. He doesn't mean this, that you're saving a Yid for the sake of Yid. He means this, you're saving Yid for the sake of a Yid. Why? Because that's an ois. The Eibishter made a deal with the Jews that you matter more than anything, including Shabbos. God, you were going to say.
I appreciate the ice part of it, but why is it still? And that's the raison d'être of why we're doing that's not considered really.
I just want you to know,
It's a
even if
fulfillment,
I
but why
spoke
is it
French,
called
I have an issue with French. But okay, go ahead.
But why is I can understand that. But why is it called an exemption essentially? Why is it deicha? If this is the reason why we're doing it, it should not be considered deicha. It should be considered this is Shabbos. This is your mitzvah. Why deicha? Why use that language?
It's one of the last. The reason one of the last from the Chimah because now.
Look, if that's
Let me answer you philosophically. Because if it would be Hutra, you would not be Mechal Shabbos. He wants it to be Mechal Shabbos. He wants it to be Chilul Shabbos.
So it's an intentional.
Yeah. Why? Because then it's a nice. Who wants it to be Chilul Shabbos? It's like when you eat today to save a life. You could say it's not today. No. It's today when you're eating it.
Highlighting the contrast. Essentially.
I'm just giving you an answer. I'm giving you a philosophical answer.
What's the meaning here?
How you could be Mechal Shabbos to save your own life? How could you be Mechal? The Rebbe has a Sikha on Bris Milah. It came out in Nun Beis. Remember the Likud? Where the Rebbe has a Shaila, the Rebbe brings in the Sikha that there is no greater Mesidus Nefesh than a moil who's mal somebody else's kid on Shabbos. Because he has no chiyuv to be mal the other kid's child. A father is mechuyev to circumcise his son. When Shabbos comes, So the halacha is you would do the Milah on Shabbos, whatever it says, Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, you do the Milah on Shabbos, you deicha Shabbos. But it's not the Moil's kid. So when somebody else is Mal, your kid on Shabbos, he's Machal Shabbos, that you should be Mekayim Mitzvah. So that ever brings it as a dogma that is the maximum Mesiras Nefesh. Why? You're be Mechal Shabbos, somebody else should do a mitzvah. Here's the same thing. A person is ill. So he's allowed to desecrate the Shabbos for himself. But why should one Yid desecrate to another Yid? What the answer is, he's not desecrating Shabbos, he's keeping Shabbos. Because what is keeping Shabbos? Keeping Yidden. Keeping Yidden. Because Shabbos is an ois.
There's a constant process. Whoever's involved has a head to Machal Shabbos, whether it other Yidden, not other Yidden. As soon as it's Zakana, everyone has a license to Machal Shabbos.
And the Rebbe is asking why. The Rebbe is asking why. Why?
That's the law.
I know, but why is that the halacha? But where do you learn it from? Where do you learn that halacha from?
One guy takes 3 guys, 100 guys, all of them are potter.
Where do you learn that halacha from? Where do you learn that halacha from? From the Gemara. Where did the Gemara learn halacha from? From a pasuk. What does the pasuk say? You should live as a Jew and not die as a Jew. I'm not dying as a Jew. Why should I Mechal Shabbos? Asking a simple question.
I mean, it's going on the person.
Yeah, obviously it's going on the person. It's going on the person who would otherwise die. So why should one person Mechal Shabbos and another person shouldn't die? And what the answer is, he's not being Mechal Shabbos, he's keeping Shabbos. He's keeping Shabbos. Why? Because Shabbos is an ois that Yiddishkeit is about Yidden and the Eivishter. It's gewaldig. I'm not saying it edel enough. I'm not delivering it right. I'm too excited. This svara is such an edel svara. So that's sheine svara. So that's shape. What's that sheine svara? It's a beautiful insight. Because when you learn things up in nigle, your whole way of understanding is by nafkamina, separating, you know. The Rebbe starts with it by separating, two gedorim. And then the Rebbe shows you can't separate. Why? Because the Rambam says by Shabbos that you learn from Shabbos to Kol HaTorah Kula. So if you learn by Shabbos that Shabbos Kol HaTorah Kula, so why does he say it twice? The only answer is that anytime a person is mechalal a mitzvah to save a life, there's 2 madreges in the v'chai b'hem. One madreg in the v'chai b'hem is before you have the Eis of Shabbos, so that the other person should well do a mitzvah tomorrow. And the other madrege is you're preserving Yiddishkeit, because Yiddishkeit is Yidden. And all of this is written befeirish, in the Rambam. The Rambam is clear. The Chinuch just adds the Nekudis about Yidden, but it's the Rambam. It's also the Rambam. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay, it's a schlafen gesundheit. I just need one person to look at me. I'm not saying you should sleep. God forbid. Back to the beginning. The end you can learn on your own. This is Memdala, he knows about the Sikha Bayard.
Should we start the Roshim then? Or?
The first Pedic is Gemara. Okay? The second Pedic, and he goes from the Gemara to Shabbos. B'shayches mit an Inyan for Bekuach Nefesh, when it comes to the idea of Bekuach Nefesh being Deiche Shabbos, state in Gemara, Minayin le Bekuach Nefesh or Deiche Shabbos, how do you know that to save a life you push away Shabbos? Und die Gemara bringt Kama v'Kama limudim, brings a bunch of limudim, und viertais and concludes as the limud of Velchas Netakim Pircha is the only limud which you cannot slug up is the pasuk in our pasha ushmartem es chukeisei ves mishpata. You should guard my edicts and my judgments. Ashiyasa esam ha'abna, that a person should do v'chai behem and he should live with them. And the Gemara translates v'chai behem, he should live with them, v'leish yom with them, he shouldn't die with them. Is l'cheira tamur, the Rebbe's shaila is. It's like klal b'chol teira kula. It's not a din in Shabbos, it's din in Yiddishkeit. As ein lach dover she'ei mei b'fnei pekuach nefesh. It's a rule all over the Shas. In footnote 5, he brings the Gemara in Yuman and Ksubis that all mitzvahs, with the exception of a desire to get the shvichas damim, you're supposed to do the Aved and live. Chutz me yav v'yahore. Chutz me v'yadezare g'yaloi shvichas damim. If a vos dafen have ma bazunda limud. Why does the Gemara bring a separate limud? The Gemara already brought this idea that with the exception of a Zara Yetzom Yavah Vayari. Why by Shabbos does the Gemara bring another limud from B'chai Behem as B'ruch Nefesh as Deiche Shabbos? Why? What's the need for it? Okay? Nochmer, even more. B'neged dem din from Yavah Vayari. This din that all over Yiddishkeit, you do an Aveda and you live, bring sich B'kama, V'kama, Mekame, das Meled, and Dab von dem selben Pasuk. You use the same pasuk. V'chai behem v'shabbos behem. And in footnote 7, the Rebbe brings a bunch of Rashis. Rashi in Sanhedrin, Rashi in Yuma, Rashi in Shabbos, and Rashi in Psachim. Okay? So there's a bunch of sources in Chazal and in Yishonim that from the same pasuk you learn the idea that you do this aveda and this aveda and this aveda and this aveda to save a life. So you use the very same pasuk. In other places, it's a universal law. And here in Masechta Yuma, it's a din in Shabbos. How does that work? That's the Rebbe Shaila. Continues the Rebbe, second column, third line. Is der fun moving? You must say Pshat in the Gemara. Because of the redundancy of the Gemara. As das was the Gemara bringt. The fact that the Gemara brings in Benegeh to Shabbos. The limud Beneyuchad Benegeh to Shabbos. A special limud about Shabbos. Is this nid selbe Indian versteht bekam makemis. It's not the same thing that a person is supposed to do an aveda and save a life. There's two gedolim in doing an aveda and saving a life. Get the number one, kol atei kula minus aveda zara, gil reis and shvichas damim, and get the number two is Shabbos, and you learn both in the same pasuk. You learn both in the same pasuk. But abazunder the cheshaychas to Shabbos. Next paragraph, please. So the Rebbe showed it to you in the Gemara. Al derech zeh daf masheni Rambam. Was euch bringt dem limud say the Rambam brings the same limud from the same pasuk twice, and the deal here the Rebbe brings his goiness. Frier in Hilchas Yesed Yater. In the very beginning of Rambam, Glocha Pekiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem and so on, bezogte Ketzad Kishiyam David Yechav. A goy is going to get up. V'yenes es Yisrael laver al achas b'kol mitzvos amur b'tei is going to force a Jew to do any aveda. Or again, it was going to kill him. The halacha is Yava v'al Yehorik. Of course, you're talking about L'teyov, not Lahachis. It's not Arkes and the Mesane. It's not L'teyov. It's not the Yifach Chilul Hashem. Then you mechuyev to base the nefesh for kutzah shayud. He wants to do this aveda because he needs it for himself. Yave, do the aveda v'al Yehorik. It shouldn't be killed. Shenem arba mitzvahs, the same pasuk. Yaseh eisam ha'adam v'chai b'hem. And then Rambam says twice. He brings the pasuk, and then he says a second time, "V'chai behem v'leishamas behem." This is one of the diyukim that by all mitzvahs he brings the pasuk, and he translates what is the meaning of v'chai behem. When you do a mitzvah, you should live and not die. V'immeis v'le'over, if you chas v'shalom allowed yourself to be killed, mischai b'nafshi. Und der noch in Hilchos Shabbos, second line from the bottom of the page. Dr. Nachamo, also list Ma'amei Bechel Shabbos L'chei L'shim P'tichon. You're not allowed to hesitate when someone is sick and their life is in danger. Turn the page. Shenemar Asher Yasa Eisam Ha'odam V'chai B'hem V'leish Yamad B'hem. Notice that Ram does not say the words V'chai B'hem twice. It's one of them as big as the yuk. So by most places V'chai B'hem V'chai V'leish Yamas. By Shabbos V'chai B'hem V'leish Yamas B'hem. And the Rebbe is medayik that the fact by Shabbos he doesn't say V'chai B'hem twice is because by other mitzvahs it's together in the mitzvah. In Shabbos it's together in the yid, in the life. It's together in the ois. Okay? L'chayre yesh leima. Ist nicht verstandig. It's pas the gashe. Favos darf bringen demselben Limit zweimal. Once the Rambam says in Hilchos Yater, which is the very beginning of the Sefer, that you're supposed to live and not die, why does he bring it again by Shabbos? Yeah? L'chayre yesh leima, you could answer. Because in Hilchos Shabbos, the Rambam Moisef, he adds. In the other places it says, you should live and not die. And here he adds, Halamaz, that teaches us, She'ei mishpat te'atei nekama be'el, the mishpat is not vengeance, el rachmim, v'chesed, v'shalom, it's compassion and kindness and peace ba'el. Okay? Mash'en kein, the first time he doesn't say it. Okay? Aber in Hilchos, der Teile sagt das nicht. So you have two gedorim in V'chai Behem. One get in V'chai Behem is that you have to do the Aveda and live. The other get is that V'chai Behem, you have to keep Shabbos, you have to desecrate Shabbos and live. Why? So you should know that the Teile is kind. Same pasuk, same practical action, but a different message. By most Avedas, the message is do the Aveda and live. By Shabbos, the message is the Eibush is a nice guy. That's what the Rebbe is saying. Second column, 134. In the meantime, the Rebbe is going to say Pshat. Das was by kol ha-mitzvahs is ein lechad dovish eimim b'nei b'kuach nefesh. All other mitzvahs. Nothing stands in the way of saving a life. And yavav al yehorim, do the aved and don't get killed, is a din miyuchad b'fnei atma. It's a separate Allah. The says, says nid de pirush as makam sakos nefesh is nitad dechiyah. L'kayim the mitzvah. When your life is in danger, you still have a chiyuv to do the mitzvah. The chiyuv bleibt, you still have to do the mitzvah. And it says no at b'kuach nefesh is teichad dem chiyuv. By most mitzvahs, you're still not allowed to eat treif, but you eat treif to save a life. Machon came by Shabbos of the Rambam. Shabbos agabe chayla shesh b'sakana arehu kechayl. When it comes to a chayla, it's weekday. L'chol advar the says nit as pikuach nefesh is doicha the mitzvah of Shabbos. Not that pikuach nefesh pushes away the aved of Shabbos. Nor as smach dem Shabbos kechayl they shet in Rambam. When it comes to pikuach nefesh, it's a weekday. Skip the bracket. When the Rebbe is the Rambam, Machon, so the Rambam says it twice. Why? Because by most mitzvahs, it is still chilul a mitzvah, but you have to do it. Or to say it in plain words, in this first half of the Sikha, the Rebbe is saying that most times you do an aved to save a life, it's duchuya, and Shabbos, it's hutra. But the Rebbe is going to slug it up. He doesn't stay with it. The Rebbe is going to show that Shabbos is also toy. That's why the Rebbe is going to have to come on to the Edelkai, to the Sefer after the Sikha, which I already showed you. When the Rebbe is like the Rambam Nachamo, he has to say again by Shabbos, the Melimud v'chai be'evelei Shabbos be'em. And he adds, Halamadata, it teaches you, she'in mishpati ateidah nekama v'elam. You shouldn't see the mitzvahs of ateidah as a vengeance. El rachmim v'chesed v'shalom be'elam, compassion, kindness, and peace in the world. To say, as benegei yesakonis nefashis, when it comes to a person's life in danger, is the mishpati ateidah parenthesis b'yisur Shabbos. The mitzvahs of Torah when it comes to Shabbos, melechatchila nid gezagavan, it wasn't said in the first one. And then the Rambam brings the stukah. The Rambam suffered with the kroim, b'chayav agashmiyim. So the Rambam, he picks on the stukah. He goes after the kroim a lot more than we do, because he was dealing with them, So he brings them, Mashenkin the Apakursim, who say that you have to die and not be Mechal Shabbos. They're a bunch of idiots, but kids, because the Inyan of Shabbos, the Kiyam of Shabbos, 135, second column, first full paragraph, in other words, by Sha'ara mitzvahs, it does get the Tchuya, Pikuach Nefesh, is Dechad the Mitzvah, Mashenkin by Shabbos is Hutra. And what's the Raya? Same pasuk, different limits. By most mitzvahs, it says v'chai behem, and then he translates v'chai behem v'leish yamas behem, which meaning that for the sake of the mitzvah you have to live and not die, d'chuya. And by Shabbos, it says v'chai behem v'leish yamas behem, that mishpatei are rachmim v'chasodim v'shalom, to teach us that when it comes to Shabbos, when it comes to Pekuach Nefesh, there is no Shabbos. And in Sif Gimel, he shows it to you in the Diyukim. In Hilchos it says the Ateidah. You see what I'm reading? Second to the last full paragraph, 135. In Hilchos it says the Ateidah, b'negei tzakol ha-mitzvahs, break to them lieb, which nemer. B'mitzvahs, ashiyasa esam ha'odom v'chai behem, unchazet ibid. V'chai behem l'shiyamas behem. Mash'enki, in Hilchos Shabbos, Dr. ashiyasa esam ha'odom v'chai behem, l'shiyamas behem, unchazet nisht ibid diverte v'chai behem. It's a small diuk. By the other places it says, the Pasuk says v'chai behem, and the Gemara interprets v'chai v'leish yamas. By Shabbos, the Pasuk says v'chai, and the Gemara just says v'leish yamas. V'habir, what's enough keminah? V'chol ha-mitzvahs, and all mitzvahs, is the salimud miyuchat from Pasuk. This limud is specific from this Pasuk. It's a din in this Pasuk, it's not a din in the mitzvah. Man, let it up from our Pasuk. We learn from this Pasuk. Abezundet in another halacha, as mitzvahs eine nid doiche. 136. Dem nefesh von a yidin, mitzvahs are not stronger than the life of a yid. Not verkehrt to the contrary. Pekuach nefesh is deicha the mitzvahs. Pekuach nefesh. In other words, the din of a chai behem shows that it's not a din in eating treif. It's not a din in wearing shatnez, let's say. It's not a din in doing another aveda. It's a din in saving a life. So the Rambam says twice. The pasuk says v'chai behem, and from v'chai behem you learn v'chai behem shows them in all mitzvahs. Mash'enki menegei l'Shabbos, opposed to Shabbos. is der Pirish from Achei Behem, V'lei Chulu, like the Rambam, nicht dass man lernt ab a Sünde Din. It's not a separate halacha. That mitzad Shabbos you mechuyev to die. Nor v'den mitzad Achei Behem b'kiyu noch the Shabbos. Nor the V'lei Yom Behem is the Hem Shachabir from pasuk. The pasuk says Achei Behem means that's how you keep Shabbos. Mishpete atayra zayne gezog geworden nor when Achei Behem. The laws of Torah only said when it gives you life. Abe Arberes can bring it. Shabbos is the mechatchil in it. So the Rambam's not repeating the words V'chai Behem twice. Is saying that this is not a din in life; it's a din in Shabbos.
It's a Havamina?
This whole thing is a Havamina. This whole shtickle is Havamina. Why? Because the Rebbe is separating the two limudim in a concrete way. This is the Choya. You still have the Aveda, but you should do it. You should save a life anyway. And this is Hutra. Now, why is the Rebbe not going to like it? Because the Rambam learns from Shabbos to Kol HaTeira Kula. And once you learn from Shabbos to Kol HaTeira Kula, the whole Teira has the Maila of Shabbos. So you're back to the question, why do you say it twice? And the answer is, it's not two dinim, it's two echesen. It's two madregis in the V'chai Behem V'lei Shabbos Behem. Sif Hey, second cup. Der Bir Hanal is aber nicht in ganzen Maß. We just said it's not enough. Why not? The Rambam sagt in Hilchas Shabbos. The Rambam says in Hilchas Shabbos, Holamadav Hashem Mishpatei Atayra, all Mishpatim of the Torah are in this Geder. Right? Before, the Rebbe said Mishpatei Atayra and he put in parenthesis Shabbos. But that's not Mishpatei Atayra, it doesn't mean Shabbos. It means all mitzvahs. Das heißt, redt wegen mitzvahs bechlau. He's talking about all mitzvahs. Ukepashtas loshna kosav, as the Chumash is saying, Ashasa oisam ha'adam. Oisa means them. Them doesn't mean Shabbos. It means all tayag mitzvahs v'chai behem. Is vavos zokte das nit in Hilchas Tisedia. Tell him all mitzvahs. The Rambam himself is saying that you learn from v'chai behem that not only Shabbos but all mitzvahs to use the language of the first half of the Sikha are hutra. So you should say it in Hilchas Tisedia. And right? Kum tachais, it turns out, as their chod, listen, chod the limud halamadata. Even though when it comes to Hilchas Shabbos, you learn from Hilchas Shabbos, b'negeya ala mishpatet Torah, regarding all mitzvahs, right? That what? That it's not the pshat you're doing the aveda to save a life. It's the pshat there's no aveda. It applies to all mitzvahs, yeah. It does beikin mudgesh by Shabbos. It's emphasized in Shabbos. And the Rambam is bringing this twice, not because there's a halachic difference, at least by Pashtus. The Rambam is bringing this twice just because there's a theological difference. There's a philosophical difference. And he's bringing it twice because he wants you to see the two madreges in Pekuach Nefesh Doich. Und der Rebbe sagt der Rambam nor in Hilchas Shabbos. That's what Rambam says in Hilchas Shabbos. And er sagt, ich meise the Shlil of Eila Pekursam Shem Zechel Shabbos as Bechol. Why? Because although you cannot say that by other mitzvahs it's hutcha, and by Shabbos it's hutra. By all mitzvahs it's either hutra or hutcha. And by the way, the maskana is going to be all mitzvahs only hutcha, even by Shabbos only hutcha. But there's two qualitative levels of the meaning of the words v'chai behem. V'chai behem v'leish yamas behem for the sake of Yiddishkeit, and v'chai behem v'leish yamas behem for the sake of the ois between Yidden and the Eibishter. And that we have from Shabbos. And all of this is a Rambam. It's not a Lakut Sichas and Siderenu. It's a Rambam. Let's go. Sivav. Wer hat das versteht? There are prefaces. Behegna was the limud for v'chai behem v'leish yamas behem. This halach that the Rambam brings when you get to Shabbos, that you save a life by desecrating Shabbos. He brings this path that you should live and not die. Bring the Rabbis b'Shabbos. The Rambam brings the b'Shabbos nit of them klal ha'inyan. As pikuach deichas Shabbos. He doesn't say that when Shabbos comes, desecrate the Shabbos to save a life. He says like this: nor if them was also lehisma mei b'chol Shabbos. The Rambam doesn't say desecrate the Shabbos, save a life. The Rambam says don't hesitate, don't hesitate, don't stop, don't think, don't hesitate. The Rambam is not saying desecrate the Shabbos, save a life. He said that every desecrate every aveda, save a life. Here he's saying don't even think about it. L'chai, top of 137. In Gemara is the limud of them klav ha'inyan as pekuach nefesh as deichas Shabbos eich b'makom salf. What we learn in the Gemara from this pasuk, v'chai behem v'leish yamas, they're all avedas. you will do the Aved to save a life, and the Chiddush is, even if it's a Sofa B'Kuach Nefesh. But the Rambam doesn't do that. The Rambam says that when it comes to Shabbos, the Pasuk V'chai B'hem is adding, you shouldn't even hesitate. Okay? And then the Rebbe brings another Shita, which the Rebbe slugs up, Siv Zayin. V'yesh Leima. The Teretz is. Why does the Rambam change from the Gemara? That he learns from V'chai B'hem L'Shabbos B'hem not that you even stop up but rather that when it comes to Shabbos, your attitude of saving a life has to be that you shouldn't even pause. The Rebbe spoke many times about the mitzvah of the Alter Rebbe, mitzvah b'godol. When it comes to saving a life on Shabbos, the mitzvah is that the biggest man in the community has to be the one to be B'chal Shabbos. Because chilul lazui kiyuma, that's Shabbos. As medem shina, but the Rambam changing from the Gemara. That the Gemara says, even in the case of Sofa B'Kuach Nefesh. And the Rambam says by Shabbos, V'chai b'hem b'leish yomuz b'hem also lisma mei, can't even pause. Main the Rambam arois bringing the Hagdara in Pikuach Nefesh. The Rambam wants to explain to us what's the qualitative dimension of this fact that you desecrate the Shabbat to save a life. Last words, first column, 137. Okay, the last line, first column. Der Loshen v'der Rambam is Mishana. The Rambam changes in the Gemara and says, Asur lehismameya b'chil Shabbos l'chel. You're not allowed to pause, to hesitate, when it comes to desperate Shabbos for a sick person. Breit arois, what do these words show? As das is a isur oich with a hilchah Shabbos. This is not a din in B'kuach Nefesh, it's a din in hilchah Shabbos. Because the language that he uses is not desecrate the Shabbat to save a life. It's you're not allowed to hesitate. You're not allowed to think about saving Shabbos. Because it didn't Shabbos. Und if then bring the Rambam, and this the Rambam brings, same pasuk, but it's a different limud. When it comes to other things, you're saving a life. When it comes to Shabbos, don't even think about it.
So what other things should also be Arsalis Mamaya? Why only by Shabbos?
Because by other things, it's a din in a life. It's not a din in a mitzvah. If a person's eating treif, a person has to eat treif to save himself. And you're giving him treif. Treif is still treif. You're saving a life. By Shabbos, you're keeping Shabbos. This is Shabbos. Shabbos is the life of a Yid. So by Shabbos, you don't say, desecrate the Shabbos to save a life for the sake of the life. And Shabbos, you say, if you want to keep Shabbos, you wouldn't hesitate. Because there's a din in Shabbos. Now what makes the Sikha difficult is that you learn from Shabbos to the whole Torah. So it ends up being the universal halacha, but it's two layers of the same halacha. So in Hilchas Seder it brings to the first layer that to save a life, you mechalal this mitzvah. When it comes to Shabbos, to keep the mitzvahs, you mechalal. Why? Because it's about Yidden. And that we learn from Shabbos because of the Yos. Vahabiyur bazeh, the explanation is. Neisef of them limud from V'chai B'hem. In addition to the limud V'chai B'hem, was hotnit kem pircha, which nobody can slug up in the Gemara. In that same Gemara in Yuma, where the Gemara asks the question, how do you know that you're Machal Shabbos to save a life? There's 4 or 5 psukim. And amongst them, and this is also in Halacha, it says, V'shomru b'nei Yisrael Shabbos. You didn't have to guard the Shabbos. And in this you have the famous, which is probably in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch also, Omra Teira, the Teira says, Chaleil all of Shabbos Achas, they should desecrate one Shabbos, Kadesh Yishma Shabbos, and what the Rebbe wants to argue is, both of these limudim are halachic. They brought 2 places in Shulchan Aruch. The limud Chaleil all of Shabbos Achas, Kadesh Yishma Shabbos Harbe is for Shabbos' sake. Desecrate the Shabbat to save this life, so Shabbat to have another Yid who's going to keep it. V'chai b'hem v'leishon b'hem is not a din in Shabbos, it's a din in a Yid. It's 2 different things. Und von die Nafkemenes zwischen die 2 limudim, amongst the difference between these 2 limudim. Now skip the bracket, please. I'm sorry for doing it, but skip the bracket.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, is oich achiluk in dem geder achiluk. I'm sorry, it's a nafkemene in the criteria for the chiluk. Mitzad Chaleil all of Shabbos Achas. Kadesh, page 138. Mitzad dem Chaleil all of Shabbos Achas. This halacha that you have to desecrate the Shabbos. Kadesh Yishma Shabbos Shabbos Koil wie der Chaim sagt in Kurs, wo der Chaim says, Ula Lamdach, der Chaim adds, She'ein ze Chilul Shabbos and Chilul Shabbos, the Rebbe Zakari, Shmira, that's also keeping Shmira Shabbos. But however, das was Kari Shmira Shabbos, we call it Shmira Shabbos, der Far was der Chilul is to the mitzvah in Shabbos. It's called keeping Shabbos because by desecrating the Shabbos, you're keeping the next Shabbos. Is the Maise b'Shabbos zu what I'm doing? You see what I'm reading? Next paragraph. The Maise b'Shabbos zu what I'm doing. This Shabbos is a pull from Chilul Shabbos. Now I'm being mechalel the Shabbos. Nor as a Chilul in welchem is mechoyev. I'm obligated to have this Chilul mitzad mitzvah Shabbos b'chal next Shabbos Shabbos harbe. So Chalel all of Shabbos achas. Harbe is you're saving the life of a Yud b'mechal Shabbos so that you're able to keep another Shabbos. Machon came inside Achei Temimim. This possible that he is supposed to live is eret wegen dem kiyum mitzvahs b'chlau. He's talking mitzvahs in general. The limud is nit b'negei ma'isa chilul. It's not a din at chilul Shabbos, nor b'negei kiyum mitzvahs. It's a part of the way you do the mitzvah is by living. In other words, das ist prat in kiyum mitzvahs. It's a detail in keeping mitzvahs. Ubernit nidan kiyum mitzvah v'shira Shabbos. You want to keep a mitzvah, stay alive. Not if you want to keep a mitzvah, stay alive today, so you can do the mitzvah tomorrow. No. If you want to do a mitzvah, stay alive, because staying alive is the mitzvah. Staying alive is the mitzvah. Das heißt, Chil Shabbos, b'mokum l'kanos nefashos. Desecrating the Shabbos, staying alive is not this is nit Chil Shabbos. It's not just I'm not desecrating the Shabbos because I can keep another Shabbos. Nor diasiya is karish shmira Shabbos. This action is shmira Shabbos. The etzem ma'isa achilu. This act, desecration to the nefesh, is in Yona Shmira Shabbos. I'm keeping Shabbos. Why?
That's nice.
Because Shabbos is a nice. But what makes the Sikha so beautiful is once you have the ois by Shabbos, it informs all mitzvahs. So the Rebbe is saying, that the Rambam is saying, and the Gemara is saying, that there's two din in Pekuach Nefesh Deichem. One din is Pekuach Nefesh Deichem because of Yiddishkeit. And the second din, they're both the choya.
Yeah.
They're both. The other din, pekuach nefesh, is for the sake of saving a yid, and saving a yid is the essence of ois of Shabbos. And once you have the ois of Shabbos, well, in other words, that's why you have
Shabbos is a nice.
Shabbos is a nice, and tefillin is a nice. What is the type of nice? There's B'nai Benech. It's about the two of us.
Does that mean that both of them are essentially one and the same? Why are they considered two separate ones? It seems like they intertwine with each other.
Which two?
Where it's if it's an ice, or if it's
For the sake of doing the mitzvah.
Yeah.
Practically, they're exactly the same. Philosophically, they're enormously different. And the Rambam is saying both.
What?
That there's an inyan of doing an aver to save a life for the sake of Yiddishkeit. And there's an inyan of doing an aver to save a life for the sake of a yid because of the ice.
But if it's an ice for the sake
The Klal Messiah Mana. Once you have the second, why are you the first? It's very hard to explain in halacha. But in philosophy, the word is because this we learn from Shabbos to the whole of the Torah. For Chai Behem is not written by Shabbos; it's written by all Yiddishkeit. By Shabbos it says ois. Because by Shabbos it says ois, we redefine the Chai Behem.
Because we use the
Because Shabbos is a nice.
the V'chai by Shabbos.
Again, a second time. We use V'chai Behem by all mitzvahs also.
But because Shabbos is a nice.
So it changes the V'chai Behem. Right.
Because it's a nice, it has it with Yidden, this with Yiddishkeit.
Can I ask you a question?
At your own risk.
Okay, no. Could you be calm?
I wasn't nervous
Be
before,
nice.
I was just honest.
Okay, could you just be nice? Answer me nice.
We all give me nice.
That I can't promise.
Okay, try. Take a deep
I did an interview with Chabad.org. I've never been so honest in my life. In that interview, I said, amongst other
I
things,
don't know that. This is me being blunt.
no, honest. I said things I've never shared. Mamish, private things. That I'm not a likable person. It's true, I'm not a likable person. A boy once told me to my face, Rabbi, I loved you until I met you. When he was in yeshiva, he couldn't stand me. The minute he left yeshiva, we were best friends again. So somebody wrote a comment, which it's so wonderful. It's basically the guy said, you don't want to soften up Rabbi Paltiel. He's good today, he is, because this is his job. I can show you the comment. It was very beautiful, but
Okay. So just for this time, right?
you can revise.
You said before, Shar and Mitzvahs is Duchuya and Shabbos is Hutra. That was one of those. You said there was a.
The
story
first
about
half, the Rebbe slugged it up.
It was a whole long.
The first half is Sicha.
How did it? Yeah. Where did the Rebbe slug it up, and how did it, and what's the?
He slugged it up for two bases. In the Pnim, he slugged it up because the Rambam says that you learn from Shabbos to Kol HaTeira Kula that it's Rachmeh v'Chsadim v'Shalom.
As was?
That's Rachmeh v'Shalom v'Chsadim. Once you have Shabbos, the Rambam says that Kol Mishpatei HaTeira, not just Shabbos.
From Shabbos, you
You
learn.
learn that the whole. Yeah. So if
I'm sorry. Where does he say that? Okay. That part where he slugged it up and he got to the new answer, I didn't see that connection.
the shir started with that.
No, the shir started with the hasbara.
Yeah, but I went that far.
No, then you started from the beginning, giving the first shar mitzvahs and
Not gonna
Shabbos.
be
then
Page
all the way through.
139, second column, third paragraph. Read it,
But
please.
the Rabban Zakas.
139.
Yes, 139.
Oh my goodness, that was what you said in the beginning.
Yes, in the beginning. Read it.
You're treading on thin ice, you're going to get it soon.
Oh, the other name?
I don't understand.
Read the
I
Siche.
don't care.
Read it.
Because you went to the beginning of here. There is 139, the second paragraph?
Second column, third paragraph. Read it. Out loud.
Aber der Rabban sagt,
Damit meint ablehnen. Euch legabe alle Mishpatei HaTeira.
also nicht.
Also sehen wir noch der Fisch ist das nicht der Gruppe Zogin.
And the second raya, my friend, is what Mendy Simon pointed out to Order 33. That by Shabbos it says Hutcha. That by Shabbos the Rambam writes Hutcha. So it's not a Geder of Hutcha and Hutra.
It's not the Sicha.
Right, it's not at all.
It's about an ace.
It's
Yiddishkeit and Yidden.
Yiddishkeit Yidden. And the whole Chassidus is that it's about Yidden. The whole Chassidus.
And what's in this line? One of the four most important words in Kabbalah in the
No.
Chol Tzara Sam Leitzah. Leimet Avav.
Yeah.
We're connected. We're hurting, Hamish is hurting.